And we're recording now, just letting you know. Sorry, my apologies. Just get this set up. Okay, great. Okay, so welcome to the 2020 Austin Ivy Plus Virtual Speaker Series hosted here in Zoom and streaming live on YouTube from Austin, Texas. My name is Stephanie Pace. I'm a realtor here in Austin and the president of the Cal Alumni Club of Austin, an affiliate chapter of the Cal Alumni Association at UC Berkeley, and an active social and professional networking organization of more than 300 Cal alumni living in Austin, Texas.
Hi, and my name is Marina. I'm a data analyst in Austin and a member of the Austin Ivy Plus leadership team. This event not only represents UC Berkeley, but also represents the Austin Ivy Plus, a collection of over 1,000 Austin-based alumni from all the Ivy League schools, the Seven Sisters, and several prestigious private and public universities. Tonight, we're highlighting the work of Austin-based superstar Judge Jan Soifer. Here's a little bit about her mission and background.
Women make up 51% of the population, but only a third of elected positions. What does the path to serving as an elected judge look like? How do judges in our civil district courts serve the public? And what is a judge's day like, and how is it different during the pandemic?
Judge Jan Soifer, who has served as the presiding judge of the 345th District Court since 2017, will share her path to being elected as civil district judge and how others can prepare to run for office. Jan graduated from the University of Texas School of Law with a JD in 1982 after receiving a Bachelor of Arts in 1979 from Yale University.
As a full-time trial lawyer in Austin for over 34 years before becoming a judge, her experience has included handling the recent successful case by a same-gender couple against the Hood County clerk for refusing to issue a marriage license to them after the Supreme Court's decision striking down laws against same-sex marriage, and the case by Whole Women's Health and other Texas abortion providers against the state of Texas, which successfully challenged the restrictive provisions of HB 2 that had closed more than half of the abortion clinics in Texas, in a victory in the U.S. Supreme Court.
She's also handled a whistleblower case that resulted in a settlement of almost $100 million for fraudulent behavior by a large hospital chain, and the successful class action lawsuit against the Pedernales Electric Cooperative based on fraud and breaches of fiduciary duties by its management.
We have one request for our audience. Please mute your audio when our speaker is talking and remain muted until audience Q&A. If audio does become an issue, we'll be forced to remove you from tonight's event.
Now we're ready to hear from Judge Jan Soifer. Take it away.
Well, I'm happy to be here tonight, and I have to tell you that my path is not a direct one, and I wasn't elected until I was actually in my late 50s. So it's sort of a long path, but after I got out of law school, I got really involved in professional organizations and ran for their board. First, Travis County Women Lawyers, Austin Young Lawyers Association, where I became president, the Austin Bar Association, where I became president of that board. And then I was elected to the State Bar of Texas, their board of directors. And my dad was a veterinarian and was always really involved in all of his professional organizations. So it seemed really natural to me to do that. And then I got involved in improving legal services to the poor. I got involved in our local bar-sponsored legal services organization, now called Volunteer Legal Services of Central Texas. I was on a state bar committee that worked on improving access to justice, and then the Supreme Court created an Access to Justice Foundation, and I was one of the initial commissioners appointed to that foundation board. And so I got really involved in that. I also worked on developing my professional skills, becoming a better trial lawyer. After about 10 years of practice, I was hired to be an adjunct at the University of Texas Law School to teach trial advocacy, where I got to also mentor law students and then ultimately young lawyers. And a lot of those law students are now, terrific trial lawyers who are here in Austin. So it's a lot of fun to see them. And one of them was recently elected judge, so she's going to be one of my colleagues. In the meantime, I also did all the same things that many of you have done. I got married, I had 2 kids, but I chose well and had a very, very supportive spouse who always did at least half of the child raising responsibilities, which I think makes all the difference. Because of an interest in social justice, I also got involved in Democratic politics. So I joined some of the local Democratic groups, Capital Area Democratic Women, North by Northwest Democrats. I volunteered on a lot of campaigns for people I believed in who were running for judge and other offices. I raised money for them. I went out and canvassed and did block walking, which is actually something I did as a first-year college student in New Haven during the 1976 presidential election for the first time. I also got really involved in some community organizations, including the board of the Jewish Community Association of Austin. I became president-elect of my religious congregation, and then got involved in an interfaith group called Interfaith Action of Central Texas, and became president of that organization as well. And along the way, I became interested in using my professional skills and interest in justice as a judge. And so in 2004, I ran to be a civil district judge to practice in the same courts that I had been a lawyer in. I won the bar poll, so I had the overwhelming support of the lawyers in Travis County, but I came in second out of 3 in a Democratic primary. And it was a great experience for lots of reasons. I met wonderful people. I got lots of great support, but it was also a very difficult, sort of nasty campaign. So I swore I would never run it again for anything. But I stayed involved. In 2008, I became a precinct co-captain for Barack Obama's campaign. I went to Cincinnati to help do election protection work. I thought about running for precinct chair. There was a guy who'd been the precinct chair of my precinct for a long time, but he didn't want to step aside. And then in 2010, I decided I would go ahead and run against him. So I did, and I won, and got more involved in the local Democratic Party. And then in 2013, the guy who had been the chair of the party was stepping aside to run for county judge, and I encouraged him not to because he was doing a really good job, and he said, no, I'm going to, but you should run for party chair. And oh, no, not me, I'm not going to, but I'll help you find somebody who will. And then all the people I talked to said, no, I don't want to do it, but you should do it. And so ultimately I did. It was a really fun volunteer job. It took a lot of time. But I raised over $1 million for the party, and I met a whole lot of people. So I was in the right place at the right time. And when one of the judges retired unexpectedly, I was recruited to run for the 345th District Court. And everybody promised me nobody would run against me this time. Of course, that turned out not to be true, but I was able to win. And so kind of the moral of all of that is the things I did right were getting involved in professional organizations, becoming a leader, honing my skills, getting involved in leadership in my community and political party, being somebody people could depend on, who actually rolled up her sleeves and did the work, and not somebody who just was there to pad a resume. And I think if you're interested in running for politics, those are all really good things to do, and till you find yourself in the right place at the right time to make that run. So although, as Stephanie pointed out, there aren't very many women in elected offices, although we're 51% of the population, I'll tell you that as of this coming January, where I was just reelected for my second term, fortunately without an opponent this time. But as of January, there will be 11 elected civil district judges in Travis County, all of us women. And 2 of us, Yaleys, Maya Guerra Gamble and me. A 12th civil district court was created by the legislature, and it will be filled with an appointee of the governor sometime soon who will serve until the next election. So we could have one man in our ranks, but all of the elected judges right now are women. It's the civil district judges anyway. So how do I serve the public as a judge? What do I do? State district courts are the highest level of trial courts in the state court system. There are lower level trial courts like municipal court where you would go if you wanted to fight a traffic ticket. JP courts are what's sometimes called small claims courts, and county courts at law. Each of those are courts that handle primarily smaller dollar amounts, although in our county, the county court at law judges are pretty interchangeable with the civil district judges, and we do share dockets. So as a civil district judge, I hear civil and family law cases, including business, commercial, administrative, consumer, real estate, divorce, child custody, and child protective services cases. Pretty much everything except for criminal cases. We also serve as the county's juvenile board. So we oversee the Gardner-Betts juvenile justice system for the county, and we are the audit committee for the county. So we hire and supervise the county auditor and oversee the outside audit of all of the county's finances. That way there are checks and balances. So the same people who spend the money aren't the ones overseeing the audit. We also write and revise local rules of practice and standing orders that tell the lawyers and self-represented parties the behavior and procedures for appearing in our courts. And I'm just hopefully finishing up what has been about 18 months of work in once a week meetings, working on revising all of our local rules and standing orders. I was asked to tell you what my day is like. Most days I preside over hearings and trials pretty much from 9 to 5 with 5 to 15-minute breaks in the mid-morning and mid-afternoon and a lunch break that, depending on how busy and how much work we have to do, can range from as little as 30 minutes to as long as a couple of hours. We have a central docket in Travis County, which means, well, there are some exceptions of cases that are directly assigned to us, but it means that we have a court administrator who doles out the cases to equalize our workload, and we get a huge variety of cases, which is really great. Unlike some counties that have separate family courts, we each have a 3-month family law rotation every 9 months or so. So right now I'm in the middle of a 3-month family law rotation, and those cases can be really, really emotionally difficult. Family violence, child custody disputes, sometimes just property disputes, but those are cases that really touch people's lives in a very real way. And today I just finished a 3-day trial involving a 13-year-old child whose mother died in a fight between her father and her stepfather and grandmother for custody. So those are tough cases. Before the pandemic, we usually didn't know what case we were going to hear or what kind of case or what the motion was until the morning that we got assigned. And so we learned about the cases on the fly. Since the pandemic, things have changed, and we spend most days on Zoom and hearings from our homes in virtual courtrooms like you see here, and in a virtual robe, which is not actually my real robe, but it looks enough like my robe from the shoulders up that it works for me. And then, unlike in the courthouse where I get dressed up every day because I'm going to be out seeing lawyers and litigants in the courthouse, I pretty much put on workout clothes every morning when I get up, and I put this jacket over it. And I'll show you where I really am. I am really in what used to be my husband's home office, and it has become my virtual office, but my husband is quite orange-blooded. And so you'll notice all the UT football stuff and the burnt orange coloration everywhere. But anyway, so I will say, and I probably a lot of you have the same experience, working from home during the pandemic means that I work a lot more. At the courthouse, we have deputy sheriffs who are there guarding us and guarding the courthouse, and who I learned pretty early leave for the day at 5:45 or whenever the last judge leaves. And I never wanted to be the one who always made them stay late. And so I felt constrained to leave by 5:45 or 6 most days. And here, there's nobody making me leave. And I've discovered that when my husband gets home, if I'm still working, he'll make dinner. So I have every incentive to keep working, and I often do. We have lots of matters that we take under advisement if they're complicated. And we have to spend time reviewing briefs and making decisions on the cases that we haven't been able to rule on the spot on. So also in the pandemic, the case assignments are made each Friday for the next week, so the lawyers and parties can get the Zoom links and the link to upload their documents in advance. So that means I spend a big part of the weekend trying to figure out what I'm going to hear the next week and trying to get prepared. So I think we are working harder, learning in advance about our cases and trying to work on the things under advisement. And of course, the other thing about the pandemic is we are all a little lonely, not having regular in-person human contact. I'm glad to have a couple of dogs, one of whom is snoozing over behind me that you can see now. And they keep me company during the day. And on that cheery note, I will open it up for questions.
Judge Soifer, this is Chris here. I have a question. What has been the differences in serving as a judge compared to what you expected? Have there been good things and bad things compared to your expectations?
Yes, I will say I spent a lot of time at the courthouse over the 34 years that I practiced law before I became a judge. So I had a pretty good idea of what I was getting into. But I had no idea that I was going to be on the audit committee for the county or the juvenile board. And I also didn't know a whole lot about family law because that was the one area of practice I really hadn't done. And so I spent a lot of time learning about family law, and those cases are even more emotionally difficult than I was expecting. But I would say the biggest surprise, honestly, between just the few of us here, there are a lot of really bad lawyers out there. I asked, my husband and I practiced together for about 6 years before I won this position. And I said, how come we didn't have any of them on the other side of our cases? Always seemed like they were better lawyers, but no, that has been I would say the biggest surprise is they're not prepared and they don't know what they're doing. And I can't imagine doing a job that I was so poorly prepared for and didn't really do the homework to figure out what I needed to do. One of the court administrators says, you know, it's kind of like a bell curve. About 20% of the lawyers are really, really bad. About 20% of the lawyers are really, really good. And then it's sort of everything in between. And that's pretty true.
I do have a question I thought would be interesting. How do you handle your emotions during the tough cases? Are there good tricks or
I just try really hard to keep a poker face. I know everybody's watching to try and figure out what I'm thinking, and I think it's really important that everybody see me as somebody who has an open mind, who's going to listen to both sides before I make up my mind. And so I really try hard not, I mean, there's times when you want to say, are you kidding me? That is the stupidest argument I've ever heard, but I don't say it. Now I go, and when we're in the courthouse and we take a break, I go back into our offices and to chambers with my staff, and we all go, oh my God, can you believe they just made that argument? But we all try really hard to keep a poker face. I have had lawyers tell my staff lawyer that they love watching him because he doesn't. He lets it be pretty obvious what he's thinking. But I am trying really hard to be open-minded and not to make a decision until I've heard everything. And so I try not to make people think, oh, she's already decided, or oh, she, hates this. Now, there are times when I'll say to a lawyer, well, are you arguing this? And so they kind of know, because I want them to realize they're going in the wrong direction. But for the most part, I try to keep it pretty straight down the middle.
Ask a follow-up question. What are some of the toughest, toughest emotional cases that you've dealt with so far, or like recently, anything where, ethically it was just so surprising to you? Just something where I'm just curious.
Well, I don't know that I can really talk about a specific case, but I will just tell you that one of my frustrations that's particularly true in family law, where so much depends on who you believe, because there's such diametrically opposed sides. And sometimes, and I remember pretty early on one time, there was this couple that came in, and the husband had a cast on his leg and told this story about how his wife pushed him through a window and he had a huge, cut, and he wanted a temporary restraining order to keep her away from him, and she was so dangerous. And her story was, no, he stomped on this picture just to get back at me, and that's how he cut his leg. And it didn't happen that way at all. And I ended up granting the temporary restraining order. And I remember she got really upset with me and said, well, how can you say that? How can you even, you haven't heard from everybody. And it was an emergency proceeding. So they're supposed to be 15 minutes. So I don't get to hear from anybody, but I try to protect people if I think there's any danger. And I looked at her and I said, as a judge, if I could have any superpower, the one I'd really like to have is the ability to tell who's telling me the truth and who isn't. But I don't have that power. So I just have to do the best that I can. And that's the hardest. That's, did I get it right? Did I figure out correctly who was the one committing family violence? Did I get it right about what did this one parent sexually abuse this child, or is the other parent making it up? Those kinds of things are so hard. And, we have the benefit of having the ability to appoint guardians ad litem who go and interview people. And there are people who serve as court-appointed special advocates, CASAs, who go and meet with the families and the kids, and they get to know all the people involved a lot more than I can, just watching the hearings and the trial. And those people are so valuable. If you have any interest at all, I'd really encourage you to go look at that organization, CASA, and consider becoming a CASA, because we couldn't do our jobs without them. But yeah, that's the hardest.
Do we have any other questions?
Judge?
Yes.
Do you have anything to say to court interpreters?
Court interpreters. Wow. I will tell you that that is the hardest thing for my court reporter. It's really difficult, and especially on Zoom. You know, it's one thing if you're in the courtroom and then my court reporter can kind of listen to the English and the other language is sort of background and there's simultaneous interpretation. On Zoom, we can't do that because if two people speak at once, they both tend to cut in and out. And so there is an interpretation channel that seems to work okay on Zoom, but I would just say the most important thing, especially on Zoom, is to not speak at the same time somebody else is speaking and to speak as clearly as you can, because that is difficult, really difficult for a court reporter who's trying to write down every word and every question and every word and every answer so that there's a clear record of the proceedings.
Judge Soifer, this is Anna. Other than Pat, who's terrific, and I have the privilege of knowing her husband as well, do you have any outlets or activities that help you cope with stress in your job?
Well, I have a great staff who I really, at every break when we're at the courthouse and at the end of every day when we're on Zoom, we all hang out there together after everybody else has gone away. And, you know, that helps us remain friends and have a relationship, and we can process what we've just heard, some of which is really, really difficult and emotional stuff. In this case that I mentioned that I just finished today, where the 13-year-old girl lost her mother, my court reporter lost her mother when she was a teenager to cancer. And so at one point she said to me, "Can I turn off the camera if I need to start crying?" And I said, "Of course you can." But it's just, if we didn't have each other to be able to blow off steam afterwards, I don't know how we do it. And then I'm in this wonderful book group with Anna that meets once a month, that is the most amazing group of women who have been meeting for 30 years, although I'm kind of a newcomer. I've only been around for about 20, not quite 20. And there's a lot of history between us and a lot of friendship and affection and a lot of fun. And so that's one of the things I really love. And then I exercise a lot. I discovered really early on this job is incredibly stressful. And so there's kind of two obvious choices. One is the people who go drink after work. And I've never really, I always say I drank enough in college to make up for the rest of my life, which I think is kind of true. But I don't drink a lot, so that was never an attractive option. So I exercise, and the gyms being closed has been a problem. We have a county gym right across the street from the courthouse, so I would often go over there and just get on the elliptical or do the weights or something while I waited for the traffic to clear. And now I mostly walk the dogs at the end of the day, but that helps a lot too.
Thanks. And that wasn't a setup for the book club, but yay for book club.
Yay for book club is right. The only sad thing is we were supposed to go for our 30th anniversary trip to Colombia, where Anna has family in August. And of course we had to postpone that trip, but we're going to go whenever this pandemic becomes safe enough that we can do it. And that'll be fun.
It's good to have things to look forward to, isn't it?
It is. And the funniest story about Anna, I think, is that Anna and I became friends we knew each other as lawyers, and she worked for the state bar, and you know, we were not really close, but we were friends. And I was in New Haven for my 20th maybe reunion, and walking down the street, I saw Anna and Chris and said, "What are y'all doing here?" And they said, "What are you doing here?" Well, they graduated 5 years after me. I didn't know either of them had gone to Yale, so it was pretty funny. I got a Facebook message from a friend today who I actually practiced law with for a while saying, "Have we talked about the fact that we both went to Yale?" I said, "Yeah, we're just too old to remember it."
It's a small world.
Yes, it
So,
is.
yeah. Do we have any more questions from the audience?
Maybe give people maybe like 30 seconds. We do have a question. She's asking about an earlier topic. It's in the chat box if you wanted to see that, Judge Soifer.
Sure.
Just be a moment. So she's asking, curious if it is required that judges go through unconscious bias training.
So there is a requirement for a certain number of continuing education hours a year, and some of it is required to be on family violence, and some, like lawyers, we're supposed to do some ethics training. It hasn't been mandated by the state that we do unconscious bias training, although I personally think that it should be. But I know that in Travis County, we have all been working on finding those kinds of trainings to do, and have been participating in them. So it's obviously something that's at the top of a lot of people's minds right now. We're talking about also trying to figure out what instructions and information we can give to jurors to help them think about their unconscious biases. So it's an issue for both judges and for juries, people who serve on juries, and it is something that I think that in Travis County, it's sort of a no-brainer, because most of us are pretty in tune to the need for it. I would say that I have found some of my fellow judges in some of the more rural parts of the state are not so open-minded about things like this, and it probably would be good if the state mandated it. Of course, isn't that how it always is? That the people who really need it aren't the ones who are open to it. Those of us who are open to it need it as well, but at least we're open to it.
We do have a follow-up question from her. She said, "Great, you're hitting my follow-up question. If juries are required to take a sort of crash course in unconscious bias training."
So we've been working on what instructions we can give them and what examples we can give them. And there is actually a committee of both the judiciary and lawyers that has been set up for this year. And the president of the Austin Bar this year, a woman named Kenan Wooten, got us to got people to sign up to do a 21-day readings and videos about unconscious bias and those sorts of issues, and which was a really terrific thing to do. And so a lot of the people who got involved in that are staying involved through this committee, which actually my colleague and fellow Yalie, Maya Garrett-Gamble, is one of the co-chairs of that committee of the bar to work on both instructions and examples and trainings that we can do for lawyers, for judges, and for informational purposes for juries. Of course, you don't have a lot of time to train juries, but at least you can try and help them be more aware of what their biases may be.
Well, thank you for that, Judge Soifer. This just about concludes tonight's event. Next Thursday, we will have Rodrigo Leal as our speaker. He'll be talking about Austin's response to the climate crisis and racial inequity. We hope you have a great evening, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Again, Judge Soifer, thank you so much. And thank you so much to everybody who joined us tonight.
Thanks.
Absolutely.